Thank you very much, Mikey. I first want to extend my sincere thanks to President Hitt and his staff here at UCF. They've been really most accommodating with our numerous requests regarding the meeting, from the setup and the additional days of breakfasts and lunches and just food. It seems like there was always something to eat, and we appreciate that. I think we'll be happy to start exercising again next week, but we understand that it's a lot of responsibility, particularly with all the, if you can imagine, all the PowerPoints that we had set up and the special setup of the room. They really went through a lot of hoops jumped through a lot of hoops in order to put up with us the last couple of days. We just want to say thank you. And of course, we want to give a very special thank you to Dr. Nancy Marshall. Mikey has indicated, Nancy, that you really marshaled us around here and made things happen here at UCF. And want to just ask if you would extend a very special thanks to your staff and all help to make this happen at this point we consider a very ambitious meeting. So thank you so much, Nancy. And for you guys, Nancy's in the back. I also want to extend a very special thank you to my board members and members of and chairs of university boards of trustees and university presidents for their very active participation in our meetings over the past 3 days. And actually, it's pretty clear that you started preparing for this meeting certainly way long before you got here. And I want to thank you so much for the time that you took and the seriousness in which you addressed the issues. I know that we are all overwhelmed by the massive amounts of information which has been shared with us. And I know that we will spend the next coming months and actually years processing the information and making decisions based on it for our university system. But I'm so pleased that we have learned so much about our universities, about their programs, their goals and aspirations, and how they seek to position themselves as we move Florida forward in this new century. This is important work, and I appreciate the seriousness with which we approach this responsibility. You know, I've been on the Board of Governors for a long time, and I've received just a lot of different paper. And it's often a question of, do I save it or do I shred it? Because it's like so much information that you receive. And I kind of go through a process of elimination, and some of it I say, well, I know that if I don't have it, the board staff can have it or can reproduce it for me. You know, this time you've actually, this book is just to me a valuable tool. And it's something that I think I would always keep actually at my desk at my office, so that anytime I have questions about the different universities or different issues that we may be addressing, this would be a great resource for me. So I'm going to encourage the members of our board that as you make these different decisions, that this particular document you hold on to and keep it as a reference that we can actually always go back to and kind of use it as a guiding source as we continue our work on the Board of Governors. We have not met in person since the end of the legislative session. I just want to note that we had a most successful session. Settling the lawsuit and executing the governance agreement gave us a solid foundation for a new beginning with the members of the legislature, and it really was a great beginning. Legislation passed implementing the governance agreement. We received outstanding operating funds in PICO dollars, the majority of which was spared the governor's veto pen, and there was a new sense of a mutual respect and recognition of working together to build a strong university system for a healthy Florida economy. I thank everyone for helping create this new relationship, the board members, the trustees, Chancellor Brogan, university presidents, boards, and university staff members, and of course our Florida Student Association and our student governments. You know, I look to you, Governor Franklin, because the Florida Student Association was very active with us this past session. I just want to thank you all for that commitment. And also to members of the legislature for wanting to move forward together in a new way. It was really, really great. I know that the Chancellor was there almost every day. The chairman of our legislative committee, I think Governor Colson was there, and different members were really committed to ensuring that we got off to the right foot with the legislature after we signed the agreement. It may be summertime, but there is no slowing down in the SUS. This meeting is evidence of the work we have to do in the coming months and years. The university system continues to be at work on many projects which extend beyond the traditional boundaries of our system and state. I am so proud of the way our faculty members and university staff members have come together as the Academic Oil Spill Task Force to offer our considerable knowledge and expertise as the country confronts the long-lasting environmental and economic damage from the massive oil gushing from the Gulf and heading to the coast of the Gulf states. This will have massive consequences for us for a long time, and I'm glad we're acting as part of the solution. We have some transitions on our board. During the past few weeks, the Florida Student Association elected Gallup Franklin as its chair, and Gallup has joined us for this meeting. He is the president of Florida A&M Student Government Association, therefore serves as a member of the FAMU Board of Trustees. He was also recently selected as a governor's fellow, so he will be spending 20 hours a week this year working in the governor's agency. He's a native of Tallahassee, a pharmacy major, a violinist, and a practitioner of the martial arts. He is certainly a busy man. We want to welcome Gallup. We know you will be an excellent successor to John Barnes. John was a great member of our board, and you certainly have proven over the last 2 days that you also will add a wonderful contribution to our wonderful Board of Governors. At this time, I want to give you an opportunity to say a few words.
Thank you for those great remarks, Madam Chair. First, I'd like to also introduce to you one of our external vice chairwomen. She's the president of Florida International University. She's also a member of the FIU Board of Trustees, other known as the finest institution in the universe. Mrs. Helena Ramirez is in the back. She was previously also the Senate president at Florida International University. She's also a political scientist, and she's the one that actually engaged in the discussion with Dr. Rosenberg earlier today. Also in the gallery, you will see the student body president from Florida State University, Mr. Dustin Daniels. And he's very, very active and engaged in Florida State's policy in reference to the Board of Governors as well. We had quite a few student body presence here throughout the last few days, and it shows the commitment that this board of directors, as well as these students currently in the state university system, are committed to influencing higher education policy here at the Board of Governors. So we're extremely serious and excited about engaging in dialogue to create an atmosphere for not only the students that currently attend the state university system, but also those students who are yet born. I'm definitely dedicated and committed to being a great representation of the over 300,000 students in the state university system. I'm also extremely excited as well. And last but not least, I have to also recognize the First Lady, the love of my life, Mrs. Adrina Biga. She's also back there sitting beside Ms. Ramirez. You want to stand for a second, Adrina? Kind of put her on the spot there. But we're definitely looking really excited and going into our planning conference, going into strategizing how we're going to address these issues in this next legislative session, and we're definitely here and committed as the students of the state university system. And thank you for allowing me to comment.
Thank you very much. Governor Franklin, to the student body president from Florida International University, would you stand again, as well as the FSU president? Would you stand? I want to give you a big round of applause and thank you so much. I want to certainly encourage you to have your colleagues attend all of our meetings. I think it's important that they are with us and understand the issues and the votes that we're taking, because certainly what we do, impact their institutions and impact, their student life. So I think it's important that they are certainly with us and a part of the conversation. And it is pretty clear from the last 2 days that you are an informed member, and we look forward to your further participation.
Thank you.
This is also Governor Judy Solano's last meeting as our faculty member, and I'm going to ask you to join me at the podium in just a moment. But Judy has just been so thoughtful and articulate as a member of our board, and I want to thank her for her contributions and for her deliberations. She's going to be succeeded by Dr. Rick Yost, who's a member of the faculty, professor, and head of the Department of Analytical Chemistry at the University of Florida. I think you may recall that Dr. Yost was here with President Machen as a part of the University of Florida presentation. I know that Rick has been here for our meetings this week, and so I know he's going to be prepared to step right in. And Judy, I'm going to step up here and ask if you would join me. The resolution that we prepared for Dr. Solano reads, whereas Judith L. Solano has provided outstanding service to the state of Florida as a member of the Board of Governors, State University System of Florida, and as the chair of the Advisory Council of Faculty Senates from August 2008 to August 2010, and whereas Dr. Solano has been a dedicated member of this board who has brought her long experience as a faculty member at the University of North Florida and has given voice to the issues important to the faculty in the state university system, particularly the continued articulation with the Florida college system as new baccalaureate institutions are developed. And whereas Dr. Solano has served as a member of the Board of Governors during a critical time as the board has begun its transition into new and cooperative relationships with members of the legislature and with members of the university boards of trustees. And whereas during her tenure on the board, Dr. Solano has been a strong advocate for the state university system and the important role all the universities play in maintaining and enhancing the economic health of the state of Florida. And whereas Dr. Solano has now completed her service as the chair of the Advisory Council of Faculty Senates and will now yield her seat on this board to her successor, now therefore be it resolved that the members of the Board of Governors meeting in the Live Oak Ballroom on the campus of the University of Central Florida in Orlando on this 18th day of June 2010 do hereby commend Judith L. Solano for her contributions to the state university system. Be it further resolved that a copy of this resolution will be included in the minutes of the meeting and the resolution be presented to Dr. Solano as a token of the board's appreciation. Thanks. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. With the chair's permission, I'd like to say just a few words. Today marks the beginning of my two-year farewell tour to a 42-year career in higher education, 40 of those years right here in the State University System of Florida. I stepped down from this board today. I stepped down from my position as director of the School of Computing at UNF this time next year, and I will retire at the end of June in 2012. One of my passions throughout my career has been faculty engagement in the governance of their institutions and in the system. I know some don't really understand faculty governance as it's a model not found in other organizations. I don't believe it's difficult, however, to understand faculty governance if you think of it simply as a model of or for good citizenship. For faculty, their primary focus is their own particular academic discipline. Faculty governance requires of us that we step out of our own areas of self-interest and become informed of the larger issues facing our institutions and the system. It requires of us that we participate in and devote time to efforts and activities designed to benefit the larger community. It gives us the opportunity to contribute to something larger than ourselves. I want to thank my colleagues, the faculty of the State University System, for the opportunity to close out my career by sitting on this board and attempting to contribute to make a difference at this particular level. I know that they don't realize how personally meaningful this experience has been for me, given that I have long held a passion for faculty governance. I also wish to thank you, the members of this board, particularly those of you with whom I've had the opportunity to serve. I thank you for allowing me, the representative of the faculty, to truly partner with you in your efforts to be good stewards of our system. In closing, I was going to introduce to you Dr. Rick Yost, who will be your new partner. He has been introduced by our chair, but let me just underline that not only has he been here for the last 2 or 3 days, and so he's had the same orientation as many of you have had, but he He did serve as chair of the Faculty Senate at the University of Florida, so he served as a member of their Board of Trustees. He has been backing me up and attending these meetings over the last 2 years, sitting out in the peanut gallery. And so he is just well prepared to step right into this role without skipping a beat. I know that the faculty will be well represented, and you and our system will be well served by having him on the board. Thank you so much.
Dr. Yost, I think you have something?
Yeah, so the ACFS similarly passed a resolution recently that Judy knew nothing about, honoring her time as a truly outstanding chairman of the ACFS, as well as a wonderful spokesperson for the faculty here before the board. And I wanted, therefore, to present on behalf of the ACFS members a resolution in her honor, which will be read into our minutes, in front of all of you here on the Board of Governors. So Judy, thanks for being a wonderful leader.
Thank you so much. Our next meeting will be at the University of North Florida in Jacksonville. It's going to be on Wednesday and Thursday, September the 15th and the 16th. I told the chancellor it sure would be nice to go to a university that was down the street from my house. I'm sorry, were you, I'm looking at Dr. Genshaw. Were you thinking something differently?
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, in September we'll be meeting at the University of North Florida in Jacksonville. Thank you very much. We'll be back at University of South Florida before the end of the year, I'm sure. So, no, thank you very much. So please mark your calendar. Also, I want to note for the board that there is a shift in our November meeting date because of conflicts with our members' calendars. Our November meeting will be held Wednesday and Thursday, November 3rd and 4th. Okay. So I want to make sure you have that change in your calendar. With that, I think we have some very special guests that we want to recognize this afternoon. I am pleased to welcome Representative Richard L. Steinberg. Richard Steinberg is from Miami Beach. We're so happy to know that he is part of our system. He is a graduate of the University of Florida, and he also received his JD and his law degree from the University of Miami. And I'm very pleased to note that he is now elected without an opponent, so we congratulate you that you are now elected to serve another term. So if you would take a few minutes, we're very happy to have you and come to the podium and make whatever comments you'd like to make to the board. Please give him a hand as he comes to the podium.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and the governors and the Chancellor for allowing me the opportunity to be here today. And thank you. I didn't know officially that I had been elected without opposition, so thank you for sharing the good news with me. Now I hadn't had a chance to call my wife and ask her. She had been checking the internet, and the cutoff was at noon, so it was just over an hour ago. So thank you, Madam Chair. I'm here today because about a year ago I found out about a law that was passed in Oregon. And, you know, Florida certainly is a state that embraces diversity. I know one of your motivations, one of your commitments here is to appreciate diversity as the Board of Governors. And the state of Oregon looked at what happened in the NFL as far as coaching with the Rooney Rule. And if those of you who are not familiar with the Rooney Rule, the NFL a number of years ago, back in 2003, realized, actually before that, but they had realized that there were a very small number of minority coaches in the NFL. And so discussions started as to what could be done to encourage more minority coaches. And so what the NFL came up with, which ended up being called the Rooney Rule, named after, actually, some of you may know Congressman Rooney. It's his father who actually drafted that rule. And the Rooney Rule simply stated that when the NFL teams were hiring a head coach, at least interview a qualified minority applicant. The thought was if you brought someone to the table and gave them a chance, that you would have the opportunity to see whether or not there was someone who could lead your organization, the team in that situation, who was a minority. And at the time when that policy went into effect, the NFL coaches, there were 6% minority coaches in the NFL. By 2006, within 3 years, that number climbed to 22%. So the policy of nearly giving the opportunity to interview clearly worked. And Oregon looked at this and said, you know what, we want to do the same thing for our state university system. We want to create a policy that says where there is an opening for an athletic director or an opening for a head coaching position, interview. If there's a qualified minority applicant, interview them, and then make your decision. And Oregon has passed that. There were at least 8 states that were considering a law this year. I introduced a bill in the legislature. It had bipartisan support and co-sponsorship, and members, you have in front of you a summary that lists the members, and certainly those of you who are familiar with the members of the House will recognize that there are people from both parties that are co-sponsors of that bill. There are people that are white, black, Hispanic. There are people from all parts of the states. It is really a diverse group of people who were supportive of the legislation. What I found out, though, during the time, or was reminded of, was the Bob Graham Amendment, which stated that the Board of Governors has the authority to do things like this, not the legislature. And of course, once we realized that, the legislation stopped moving, and therefore I am here today. And I'm here today to ask you to look at this policy. It is a good policy, I believe, for the state university system, and I think, frankly, is something that if we look 10 years forward, that other states are not only going to follow Oregon, but what will end up happening is you will see conferences, whether it be the SEC, the ACC, or other conferences, adopting policies, and eventually I think the entire collegiate sport association, the NCAA, will be adopting such a policy. And I would love to see Florida to be at the forefront of this mission to encourage diversity. And it's interesting that I found out, once I found out about the Oregon law and we started doing some research, we found out that one of the people who had been spearheading this issue is actually from Florida. And it's someone who's part of the state university system. And it's interesting that it happened to be when I asked to speak to you all that the meeting was here at UCF, or USF rather, at UCF, sorry, because the person is a faculty member of UCF who has been fighting for this issue for many years. And so, with your permission, Madam Chair, I'd like to introduce you to Richard Lapchick, who is a professor here, so he can give you some information, additional information on this as well.
Thank you very much.
Madam Chair, the board, Representative Steinberg, my president, John Hitt. It's a pleasure for me to be able to present some of the reasons why we've been involved in trying to get these policies changed on the national level. I have been urging something at the NCAA called the Eddie Robinson, what I've called the Eddie Robinson Rule, named after the Grambling State football coach for 57 years, that would in effect do the same thing on a national level for all colleges and universities, but the NCAA has been reluctant to do that, and that's why we initiated it first in the state of Oregon and now have come to 8 other states since that time. My passion for this particular issue started as a 5-year-old boy when I looked outside my bedroom window and saw my father's image swinging from a tree with people under the tree picketing, and for several years after that would pick up the extension phone in our house with people calling my dad, him not knowing I was listening, and it was nigger lover, nigger lover, nigger lover, and I had no idea what any of it meant except that a lot of people didn't like this man who for me was my best friend, and I didn't understand that at the time that he was the coach of the New York Knickerbockers and had signed the first African-American player in the history of the NBA in 1950. So it's been part of the kind of family DNA since then. And when I started to do something called the Racial and Gender Report Card in the 1980s, which tracks every professional position in all the major sports as well as college sport, in the beginning, college sport was kind of in the middle of the pack with the NFL and Major League Baseball. The NBA has always been far ahead of everybody else. But now, 20 years later, college sport stands dead last. And I think the reason it does is, as Representative said, the NFL adopted this Rooney Rule early in the new millennium. It followed actually what Major League Baseball had done in 1999. Baseball had 2 managers of color in Major League Baseball when the rule was passed. Now they have 10, and the NFL had 2 head coaches at the time. Now they have 7, including 2 who had been in the Super Bowl and 2 have actually won the Super Bowl as head coaches. But in college sport, where 25% of our student athletes are African American in men's sport, 15% in women's sports, 3% Latino, 1% Asian in both men's and women's sports. These are the numbers that we're faced with on a national basis. And I'm just going to read them to you. In Divisions 1, 2, and 3, the head coaches of our men's teams in Division 1 are 91% white, 90% white. In Division 2, 93% white. In Division 3, on the women's teams, it's 90% in Division 1, 90% in Division 2, 93% in Division 3. Our conference commissioners, who are the most powerful people in the world of sport, in the BCS conferences, the major conferences in the United States, they're 100% white men. In the Division 1 conferences, excluding the historically black colleges and universities, 100% of the Division 1 commissioners are white, only 3 are women. 94% of the presidents, 93% of the presidents, and 91% of the presidents at those universities are white. Our athletic directors are 93% white, 92% white, and 96% white in the 3 divisions. Women hold only 8%, 13%, and 27% of the athletic director positions. Our faculty athletics reps are 92%, 92%, and 96% white. Our senior women's administrators are 84% white women, 91% white women, 96% white women. The associate athletic directors are 90%, 94%, and 95% white. As you can see, the opportunities for people of color have been very small at the college level, and for me, incredibly discouraging as somebody who has worked for a university since 1970 and has felt that we, of all places, would have the most ideal set of circumstances. So the good news is in the state of Florida, it's slightly ahead of the national figures, but not very far ahead. There are 289 head coaches in all the colleges and universities in the state of Florida. 87% are white, 6.6% African American, 6.6% Latino, 29.7% are women. Our athletic directors are 11% people of color in the private universities and 22% in the public universities, which is significantly ahead of the national average. So it's because of that set of statistics that I am very supportive of what Representative Steinberg has put before you and ask you to give it every consideration. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Lapchick and Representative Steinberg. Do any of the members of the board have any questions? Governor Edwards.
I certainly understand the point of view that our speakers were coming from. Thursday night at our dinner, someone asked me what the biggest difference between the system that I first became involved with in the late 70s and the 80s and the one today. I had to think for a minute, and it suddenly became very obvious to me as I remember sitting where I am looking at that table where all our speakers spoke. In the time that I first became involved in our system, almost every person who would have spoke to us would have been a white male. Over the last 2 days, the amazing change in gender and race of the people who spoke to us, who have taken a leadership position in our state university system, I'm very proud of. As I think about the makeup of this board, it is amazing to me the diversity that we have. Our last 3 chairmen, our chairwomen, by the way, have been minorities. I certainly understand, Representative, where you're coming from, and I agree with your goals. My question, 5 of our 11 presidents are minorities. I think that our system is changing within. It's changing without somebody having to say, you got to do this. And although I admire you for taking a stand, and I certainly support what you're trying to achieve, I simply don't believe that by this board passing a regulation which would require that minorities be interviewed, is going to solve the problem. I think our staff, our presidents, feel the same way that you do, and I think you're going to see that being changed by their decisions. I also question to some extent the role this board should play in the athletic programs of our university. So I compliment you for your beliefs. I simply don't believe the approach you're taking is the one that we should take now.
Governor Colson?
Excuse me, I was chair of the University of Miami when we hired Randy Shannon as the head football coach, and I'm very proud of the fact that President Shalala at the time made that hire. I think he was hired because he had ties to the university as an alum. He had a reputation for discipline, which was important at the time, but most importantly because he was considered one of the best defensive coordinators in the United States. And the pool of head coaches come from either existing head coaches or offensive and defensive coordinators. And so if I really wanted to get more head football coaches in college football, I would expand this to include the hiring of coordinators by head coaches, because that's where the pool of head coaches are coming from. What I don't know is, and we're struggling with this Board of Governors has newfound powers because of the legislature's in our agreement, our settlement of the lawsuit. We're being looked at by university presidents and boards of trustees who think we meddle too much and micromanage too much, and now we're going to go in and say, and this is what you have to do to hire a football coach. I frankly would be stunned if any university president had a problem with this, but I don't know, and maybe certainly on a football coaching hire, I would be stunned. Maybe it's not a profitable use of time when you're hiring, I don't know, a women's tennis coach. I don't know what the answer to that is, but I think I would suggest to the chair that we ought to at least send this to a committee and let that committee and let the staff start communicating with university presidents and see if there's not a way to accomplish what you're seeking to accomplish without having the BOG instruct university presidents how to hire. I would just be stunned if a university president doesn't sympathize with your position on this, and maybe we can get there that way.
Any other comments, members of the board? No. I don't know if you want to make a comment, Representative.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just wanted to respond. My mindset is I'm always about the end, not necessarily the means to get there. And so if we can accomplish this through another means, that would be just as fine in my mind. I don't know if simply asking the presidents whether they would do this, and you might have a president this year who's supportive, but we all know that the president you have today may not be the same president of the state university system 2 or 3 years down the road. So I think having a policy is probably a good thing, and I think having a statement that this is a statewide policy is a good thing as far as looking beyond the state of Florida and trying to create change for a nation and be a leader on that change. And also, to your point of some teams that maybe it doesn't work, if you look at the language that's actually in the legislation that was before the House and the Senate this year, it has a provision that says that if there's not a qualified applicant interested in the position, they don't have to do this. So if there was, if they were looking for a lacrosse coach and for some reason there was no one out there who was interested, who was a minority in interviewing, they're not obligated to. So I don't know that it's going to be overly burdensome for a university to comply with such a policy. And even if it was advisory from the board, if the board later down the road said, look, we want to adopt this as a policy advising the states to adopt it without putting teeth in it, while I would hope there'd be teeth to make sure it happened, certainly if it accomplished the ends as a way to get there, and then maybe the board came back and looked at it afterwards to see whether it was actually being followed before deciding to put teeth in it, you might be able to accomplish it as well. But I'm not necessarily concerned about how the cat gets skun, but merely how we get to where I think the state of Florida should be.
Governor Beard?
Just a quick comment. When I was chairman at USF, the first big lesson I learned was that process sometimes is more important than the outcome, and I agree with you, Vice Chairman, that we ought to take it through a normal process instead of making a decision today.
I think that, I'm sorry, Representative Steinberg. Go ahead.
Madam Chair,
Yeah.
that was certain. My intention was not to come here today and ask you to adopt the policy today. In fact, I spoke to the Chancellor about a week ago, and he informed me that that was typically the process that you all took, and that's likely what would happen, and I'm certainly okay with that and not trying to rush this through by any means.
Any other comments? My thoughts are that what I would like to do is to have one of our committees consider the issue and have them work with staff and come back to the board with some background on the issue. I think that I would certainly encourage our staff to work with your staff, since I know that you're very passionate about the issue, and certainly take advantage of Dr. Lapchick and the work that he's done here at the University of Central Florida. What I'm inclined to do is to ask if Governor Martin and the Strategic Planning Committee, if you would take up this issue, and Chancellor Burgum, if you would have staff to work with Governor Martin. And I thought, I kind of toyed between whether I have Governor Duncan or Governor Martin to address the issue based upon the way we've kind of delegated or assigned our committees, and ultimately decided I would take it through, or ask if I could take it through strategic planning, Governor Martin, take a look at it. Chancellor Burgum, if you have staff, address and work with them as well, bring it back as an issue with the board, and we'll certainly keep you involved and in the loop as we address the issue. Does that work for everybody? Yes. And this one, I'm sorry, Dr. Solano, you have a comment?
I guess as you're looking at this, maybe one question to ask is I know that we have fairly strict requirements whenever we advertise for a position to have the pool of candidates checked to make sure that there's an appropriate mix of candidates in the pool. And so for every position, basically from a groundskeeper on up to president, we're really on the campuses looking at those kinds of things. What I don't know is whether or not athletics is exempt from that. And it might be as simple when you begin to look into this is just to say that athletics shouldn't be exempt from what we do for all of our positions in our effort to try to ensure that we've got gender and ethnicity, racial balance on our campuses. And this takes into account information on the availability of candidates, and so decisions are made as to whether or not you need to go back out and look harder if there is information that there is availability. I think we do a fairly good job of this in our other positions. It's just an issue of whether or not athletics is exempt from this or not. I don't know.
I would recommend the first thing we do is an inventory to find out how each individual university handles this issue now, generally speaking, but then specifically on the issue of the athletic front. And that'll at least give us a better idea of where we are before we decide where we need to go.
I guess two comments. One is that I know we want to take advantage of the resource of the Chancellor. I know that he was, as a university president, very, very involved with, I think, the NCAA, and we have a really good outlook as to what's happening around the country. In addition, I know that Dr. Genschaft is also very involved. And Judy, I don't know if you want to comment now, but I know that you've been very involved with athletics around the country, and you may have some insight, but I would like Governor Martin, if you work closely with Dr. Genschaft on this issue, I think she'll also be able to share some insight.
Certainly glad to.
I'd be happy to be on whatever task force or committee that you have. I'm on the executive board of the NCAA, and certainly Title IX carries a lot of weight, and NCAA has a strong diversity committee that, and as one that has just hired a new football coach, I know that we filled out a lot of forms and a lot of materials about the kind of process that we use to hire the coach that we did. I don't know how each and every university is working, but I can tell you that NCAA has a lot of rules and watches this as well. I'll be happy to work with you and come up with some group recommendations.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And thank you again, Representative Steinberg, for joining us. I also wanted to mention to our university presidents, I know this is a very different format, and that normally we would have you closer to us as we go through our agenda. So please feel free, if you would kind of wave your hand, or even if you just kind of tilt your head, I'll recognize you and give you an opportunity to come up and join us here in our discussions. With that, I think that our next item of business is the approval of the minutes of our March 17.
Second.
Thank you very much. And then I just have a couple of things I want to go into. This is March 17, 2010 board meeting, as well as our telephone conference on March 22nd, April 7, and May 6.
So moved. Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Right. Then the minutes of those meetings are now approved. Chancellor Brogan.
Yes, ma'am. I'm going to go through these quickly. In the sake of time, I think most people aren't aware that the Harry Potter theme park opens today, and I don't want to be within 100 miles of it when it does. So we're going to try to get everybody on the road as quickly as we can this afternoon. A number of things, however. First of all, the oil spill has been referred to on multiple occasions throughout the course of the last 2.5 days. I'm going to send down both ends a closer look at the oil samples that President Genchef brought yesterday, taken by our scientists, just to give you an up-close and personal idea of what they're dealing with out there in the Gulf. And, I paid $1,000 a piece for those. Genchef's a pretty good salesperson. But that gives you a good idea. I also am going to pass amongst you. This is a copy of the you've heard us refer to now regularly, the FIO, which is the Florida Institute of Oceanography. It is housed at the University of South Florida and is the umbrella group for all things ocean research in the state of Florida, both public and private. You've heard us mention the fact that Florida has been fortunate to receive a $10 million fast-track award from BP that will enable us to continue much of the research that we have started among most of those institutions relative to the oil spill. The truth of the matter is that both the person power and the equipment and resources that have been applied to this work thus far has come out of the hide of the institutions. Obviously, they've diverted their time and their attention and their resources to the urgency of this issue. But to continue this effort, we're simply going to have resources. And BP, and I'll get to the next round of RFP in a moment, but BP has provided us with a $10 million fast-track grant. And through the FIO and the task force, we will be working to distribute those dollars as quickly as we possibly can. What you're receiving is a copy of the RFP so that each of the institutions will know how to apply for some of that $10 million. And then there will be a committee of representatives of the FIO that will ultimately determine how those dollars are to be distributed. But at the end of the day, the $100 million proposal that you've heard of is being put together by the FIO and by members of the Oil Spill Academic Task Force, which was working hand in glove with the FIO. And even though BP has not yet put out the date for the RFP response, we want to be ready for that. This proposal for $100 million would not only be for the hard science research, water quality, air quality, sampling of sea life, ocean bottom, etc., but would also take into account the long-term research possibilities of this spill that include economic development. I was in Pensacola with Ross Ellington from Florida State not long ago, and I can assure you, I'm not sure if Dr. Bentz is still with us, but when you say it's having a profound impact on the economic development of that area already, even in advance of the oil spill making significant contact with the Pensacola and Escambia County beaches, it is significant. Also to look at issues of demographic change. We know after Katrina that the demography of New Orleans changed dramatically and has never changed back. So how do people move in advance of these things, or how are they displaced as a result of these kinds of activities? As well as the social sciences. Oftentimes you hear people say, well, the social sciences aren't a very important part of what they do at universities. Here's a perfect illustration. There will be impact on the psyche. There will be impact on the family. There will be impact on the human equation relative to this spill. And we have an army of men and women out there in our social sciences who will be involved in the evaluation of all of that over the long term that this oil spill is going to impact the state of Florida. I remind people of this, that, and with deference to our coastal neighbors of Mississippi and Louisiana and Alabama, who are all either directly impacted or potentially going to be impacted, the state of Florida has a massive disadvantage. We have 1,200 miles of exposed coastline that is directly in the crosshairs, depending on waves, current, wind, the loop current, and a host of other factors. We have the potential for a gigantic catastrophe in the state of Florida as this oil continues to spew from the ocean floor. Now, the advantage is, I believe we are, if not one of the largest ocean research states in the country. Again, over 20 public and private institutions that do a significant body of ocean research. And couple that with the fact that we are probably better organized than any state in the country on that score, having pulled all of these great people together for some years and with great specificity now as we face the oil spill. So much work has been done, and a special thanks to people like Dr. Bill Hogarth, who is the interim director of the Florida Institute of Oceanography, Dr. Shirley Pomponi, who is the chair of the council of those institutions that I mentioned a moment ago, 20 or 21 of them, who is helping to lead the charge. She's also from FAU Harbor Branch, and the chair of the FIO Council. And Dr. Ross Ellington, I mentioned a moment ago, who has helped quarterback the work of the task force, who is specifically targeting this issue and working under the umbrella of the FIO on this one. So many institutions and so many wonderful people. In Congress, we have the total support and endorsement. The entire Florida delegation has signed off to our $100 million proposal request. Every one of them, Republicans and Democrats. As someone said on television the other day, that is not Democrat oil coming out of that hole. It is not Republican oil coming out of that hole. It is oil, and it needs everyone's unwavering support. We have that. Governor Christus signed on to this, the members of the Florida Cabinet. This truly has been an organized, unified effort, and it is important that as members of the Board of Governors, you not only know these things, but I know you join me in the pride that we all have, that our system stepped up to the plate instantly, and I think in a premier fashion has demonstrated not only that we are great institutions where we turn out great degrees, but we also have every day the capability of impacting the quality of life of people based on the great work of the men and women in our scientific community. And I think, as we talked yesterday, that bodes well for us as we also try to better organize around economic development opportunities. And this model, while in the wake of a tragedy, has evidenced itself to be very effective in seeing an opportunity to coalesce the genius of the state university system as we try to do the good work of New Florida going forward. So we will certainly, Madam Chair and members, keep you all posted on the continued success and the challenges of the FIO as we take on this enormous task on not only behalf of the people of the state of Florida, but the entire world at this point. I also wanted to let you know that just yesterday we received word. As you know, we have been working very hard on the issue of medical school residencies. I'm sorry that that Governor Hussaini had to leave us, because this is an issue, as you all know, that's very near and dear to his heart. He's got a passion for it. We have lobbied in D.C. on several occasions on the issue, and while we haven't been successful with a huge payoff on that issue, we were just notified yesterday that the feds are going to make available an RFP for 500 additional residency slots for the country. That's nowhere near, I would be the first one to admit, what this country needs, but I also recognize it is better than zero. So we're going to pull together the medical education folks at our med school universities for purposes of putting together a proposal that we can then forward to the feds to see how many of those slots we can pull home here to the state of Florida. These are generally primary care slots and very important to what we're doing here in the state of Florida. We will keep you apprised of that, but I thought you'd be at least glad to know that that has been provided to us. Also wanted you to know that there is a group working, and this is one of those issues that goes on quietly behind the scenes, but like most of you around this room, we know that our universities and the work that they do, be it student, faculty, hinges on the quality of the library and the library access. That is the epicenter of every great university. And we realize that, again, in a state that has multiple delivery systems, such as we do, between the state university system, the Florida college system, that there is, Governor Duncan, a real desire on the part of many to create a more efficient, effective system coordination among those delivery systems and what they offer. And for this one, that includes the pre-K through 12 system. My son's preschool library is vastly different than the library at the University of Florida, but the concept is no different. It's people seeking information for important purposes. And so by virtue of that fact, there is an effort that has been undertaken, and I'm working closely with Dr. Will Holcomb of the Florida College System, and we have commissioned a task force to work on the issue of libraries and library automation, to see if we can come up with a blueprint on how we can better collaborate those delivery systems and assure greater access, greater opportunity, and through the use of technology, much greater efficiency. If we're going to become the world-class system we all believe we have the right to become, we are going to have to utilize the finest library automation system that can be created for the state of Florida. So I wanted you to be aware that we're working on that. Skipping forward, new Florida funding. You're all aware of the fact that we did receive $10 million of non-recurring revenue from the legislature as an installment on New Florida. We hope that that is also a flag in the issue for the legislature and as to the importance that that concept has for our entire state economy. But I did want you to know that we're putting together a group to determine how that $10 million might best be spent through the system, not only to provide good individual opportunities, but to make sure that it is clear to everyone, including the legislature, that we can maximize the use of that $10 million for the greatest return on investment for New Florida concepts. So we have begun that process, and we're looking at some exciting possibilities. We're going to tap the universities for their ideas, but we've already had some good ones put forth, such as helping if the University of Central Florida, Dr. Hitt, is very close to perhaps landing a world-class scientist in a particular area, but for a little more money for equipment or an opportunity to lure that scientist, and as we heard yesterday, some of the scientists who travel together with them, that perhaps we could create a matching relationship with the universities that might put them over the top in their ability to land that world-class scientist. That's just one of the ideas that we've been kicking around that could really help to provide hardcore evidence that this money is giving us a return on investment for not only the system, but for the New Florida initiative. So we'll keep you posted, and it is our desire to do this as rapidly as possible to make sure that money is getting out there into the system to benefit the system as quickly as we can possibly do that. Moving on. I did want to let you know very quickly that we have written a letter to both the President and the Speaker. As you recall, the Higher Education Coordinating Council was passed into law this session. That's the group that will help us better articulate the different delivery systems. Most of the representation is by title. As I mentioned yesterday, save 2 positions, 2 business people, one named by the President, one by the Speaker. We've begun to communicate with the Speaker and the President, ask if they could get us those representatives as quickly as possible. So our hope would be that we could begin perhaps as early as August, at least with the organizational activities surrounding the work of the Planning Council, which is significant. But I did want to also let you know that our work continues with the different delivery systems, having regular meetings with the leaders of ICUP, the proprietary system, certainly the Florida College system, and we have right now groups working on 3 different initiatives that are going to be very important to the Planning Council when they finally come together. So it is all working out well in terms of the work we've started as that work continues with the Planning Council once they are seated. Legislative budget request. It is important to footnote here that Governor Colson mentioned earlier that the board has begun a collaborative process to create the system's legislative budget request, and that'll come before the board in September for review. It's been stated several times in several different ways, but I simply remind people that the legislature is already anticipating a $5 or perhaps $6 billion shortfall for this coming year. This also, as someone stated earlier, maybe it was Governor Perez, this is the year that we run out of stimulus money. And by virtue of that fact, we're working with each university to determine how deeply we are into the stimulus money on a recurring side, that being money that we would need to deal with for replacement purposes to try to formulate our legislative budget request as we go forward. But that is going to be compounded by the shortfall we're already facing. So even though I think we'd all agree, all things considered, we had a very good legislative year this year economically, we're not making any big cuts, that's something we're going to have to think about. It also includes the unknown relative to the oil spill. None of us knows today the potential impact that the oil spill may have on projected budgets and revenue streams. Our hope is very little, but the possibility is immense. If we look at the expansion of this oil spill to the greater peninsula and to the Keys and consider what it is already doing to just Pensacola, where it's already made landfall, the possibilities here are enormous. And I'm not trying to be the prophet of doom, but we've all got to be mindful as we build our budgetary year of the possibility of some kind of a negative revenue impact that this bill has the potential to bring to us. By virtue of that fact, what I would request that we all do is, again, as much as we don't like this, look at our budgets, look at the way we're building our budgets, and be mindful of the fact that if we are called on to do so, and if it becomes necessary, we may have to dig down again. And that's a difficult thing to say after the last several years, but I think we would be remiss as an organization if we didn't consider those possibilities. Whether they are probabilities or not remains to be seen. But we'll be working, Madam Chair, with everyone on this concept for some time now to see if we can somewhat organize it to make sure that if and when it happens, that we are in a position to deal with it. Whether it's just the $5 or $6 billion shortfall itself and the stimulus money, or whether that's exacerbated, Lord help us, by the oil spill. It's just good business to be prepared for the possibilities. Lastly, I think I wanted to end where the chairwoman ended and say thank you to everybody who's been involved in this. And that really starts with the staff of the Board of Governors and the staff of the universities. The presidents have been great, the Board of Governors have been great, the boards of trustees have been great, but as is typical, the lion's share of the work that has gone into what I hope you will agree has been a very successful 2.5 days has been shouldered by our staff members. They have done a remarkable job of preparation. They have spent countless hours working together with one another on everything from work plan templates to presentation materials to the logistics and setup. And I would hope you would agree with me that it has paid a great return on investment. I really believe that the chairwoman and the chair of our strategic planning committee, Chair Martin's vision of what we could accomplish here has truly come true. The many great comments I've received from all of our universities throughout the course of the 2.5 days, I think, are proof of that. The great comments I've received from you as board members, I think is true to that same notion. The fact that we heard great presentations, we accomplished a great amount of business on the differential tuition side. I think we're already beginning to see how that process will unfold in years to come. I really do believe that this has been an enormously successful experience for all, And not to thank everyone who has been, in a small or large way, instrumental in making that happen would be a major mistake. So thank you again to everybody. And lastly, again, thank you, President Hitt, to all our friends at the University of Central Florida. You did an extraordinary job of quite literally rolling out the red carpet and providing us a wonderful environment in which to work and make our business even more fruitful. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Chancellor Bergen. You know, before the meeting, Mikey asked me whether or not we were going to use those little time cards that we had previously, I guess, used on the last couple of days. And I think, I think we're going to need them for both myself and the Chancellor. So the idea is that 60, 30, 15, red stop. I think you need to hold on to those, and we'll start instituting those.
It's a great investment of $1.50.
Exactly. Start using those as a part of our meeting. But thank you so much for your report, Chancellor Bergen. We're now on to item number 4, and I'd like to invite the chairperson of the Florida Atlantic University Board of Trustees, Chair Nancy Blosser, to the podium. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Ava, you have them now. We gave up on the time cards when he was at FAU.
Yeah, you take the good with the bad, you know.
It's just kind of ironic that
I'm like the baseball player who runs through the sign at third base to stop.
Nancy, tell him that we learned one thing with Frank. Just when you think he's winding down, he's really winding up.
That's true. Madam Chair and Governors, I'm here on behalf of the Board of Trustees of Florida Atlantic University to ask you to confirm Mary Jane Saunders as our new president. We were asked to describe the search process and give Dr. Saunders' qualifications, and providing that there is now still enough time for me to speak, I will go through the search process unless you would like to skip over that.
No, please go ahead.
Okay. Frank left Florida Atlantic University on September 11th last year, and we were charged then with finding a new president. We started with our board retreat on September 22nd and 23rd, where over 2 days we discussed where exactly we were, where we wanted to be in 5 years, and what type of leader we needed in order to get us there. The Board of Trustees then voted to launch a search for our 6th president. At our board meeting on October 21st, we selected Bill Funk of R. William Funk and Associates to be our search consultant. I can't say enough about what a wonderful partner he was in our search, and I can't recommend him enough. He was absolutely fabulous. We also at that meeting appointed an 11-member search committee. Bill Funk came to our campuses on October 26th and to the 28th, where he conducted 12 open forums and meetings across 5 of our campuses. He met with board members, administrators, faculty, staff, students, and community people to receive input on the desired qualifications and characteristics of our new president. During this visit, we also had our first search committee meeting. And immediately thereafter, on October 28th, we went live with our FAU presidential search website. This proved to be a very, very important item in our search. We used it to introduce the Presidential Search Committee to our university community. It provided frequent updates to the university's internal and external community. It served as a resource for any potential candidate. They could go on the website, learn everything you could possibly learn online about FAU. And it served as a tool to receive input, nominations, or questions from any interested party. This was also an extremely important part of our search. We realized early on that it was impossible to have a search committee that represented every constituency of FAU. We are just too big and stretch too many miles to be able to include all those people. So we had a commitment early on that we would keep people informed through the website. We would ask for input and nominations, and we would also use this website for our webcasts and archive webcasts of everything that went on during the search. We had our second meeting on November 1st, where our search consultant met with the committee to discuss the feedback that he had gotten from the open forums and to finalize the desired professional and personal qualifications that we were seeking in our next president. Just to give you an idea of our search committee, again, it was 11 members. I chaired it. We had a faculty representative who was our faculty trustee, president of the University Faculty Senate. We had a representative of the deans, someone from staff, the Student Government Association and trustee represented students, someone from alumni, foundation and FAU advisory boards, community leader. We had the mayor of City of Boca Raton, and finally, community partners. We had Harry Orff from the Scripps Research Institute serving on it. In addition, we had 2 other members of our board of trustees. We were then off and running. The majority of our search took place between November and mid-February. The position was posted, the position announcement was posted. We placed our advertisements. We distributed the position notice to the search consultant's proprietary list of over 600 sitting presidents, administrators, and officials. I sent out 600 letters to FAU advisory board members and friends of the university community seeking nominations. The search consultant interacted with potential candidates. He was full out a recruiter for sure on trying to develop a good pool of candidates. Ultimately, all of these efforts resulted in a pool of 43 qualified candidates that included sitting presidents. All of these were posted on our website by February 16th. On February 23rd, the search committee met. We narrowed the list down from 43 to 5 semi-final candidates. And they were invited to come to the university 2 days later on February 25th, where the search committee then narrowed that group of 5 down to the 3 final candidates. All of the deliberations of the search committee were webcast and available through the FAU website. The final 3 candidates were invited to come back to FAU's campuses between February 28th and March 3rd. Each of our candidates, each of the 3 candidates, visited 3 of FAU's campuses, which span over 100 miles. They each participated in 8 open forums or meetings and or interviews, which included a welcome reception each evening for one of the candidates. They met with senior staff and academic deans, and they participated in open forums for faculty, staff, students, and members of FAU's regional communities. Over the 2 days, we held a total of 24 forums designed so that candidates never were in the same place at the same time. It took an engineering degree to figure out where everybody was at any given time. At each of the forums, comment cards were handed out. We collected all of those cards, and along with the comments that came back from the website, those were all distributed to each of the board of trustee members so that they could review them before the March 3rd meeting of our Board of Trustees, where each candidate was interviewed individually for 90 minutes. This also was webcast. It became the version of FAU's reality TV. We learned afterwards that in the middle of these interviews, the website had over 500 hits, and we had heard about how many offices were just around different computer screens watching not only the interviews but the deliberation of the board. I want to emphasize that we ended up with 3 great candidates. Any one of them, I truly believe, could have been president of FAU. And probably the most difficult part was making a decision between 3 very outstanding candidates. But ultimately, we did do that. And after what ended up to be a little over a 5-month process from beginning to end, our Board of Trustees unanimously selected Dr. Mary Jane Saunders as the 6th president of Florida Atlantic University. We got back many comments from the university community about the search process and about Dr. Saunders, all of which have been very positive. Most thought that it was a fair, inclusive, transparent process, and the FAU community is extremely pleased with our selection of Dr. Saunders. These are just some pictures of the welcoming reception that we had for Dr. Saunders the day that she was selected. Now I'd like to tell you just a little bit about Dr. Saunders' academic background. She has a BA in biology from Boston University and a master's and PhD in botany from the University of Massachusetts. She did a postdoctoral fellowship at the University of Georgia. She started her career at Louisiana State University, where she was an assistant professor in the botany department. She worked for 16 years at the University of South Florida as an assistant and then an associate professor in the biology department, and then became the director of the Institute of Biomolecular Science there. She left USF to become the deputy division director of the National Science Foundation in the Division of Biological Infrastructure. Dr. Saunders came to us from Cleveland State University, where she served as director of the Biomedicine and Health Institute, where she then became the founding dean of the College of Science, and most recently served as their provost and senior vice president for academic affairs. Our Board of Trustees was very impressed that Dr. Saunders' career has played a significant, during her career, she played a significant role in setting the direction to raise academic standards, focusing on signature areas, connecting with the community, establishing innovative programs, maintaining fiscal responsibility, fostering faculty research and scholarship, and ensuring student success. All of these, we felt, were the perfect foundation for a university president. Yesterday, you saw in FAU's presentation how Dr. Saunders showed her how she can be a passionate advocate for our university. And on behalf of our Board of Trustees, I ask that you vote to confirm Dr. Mary Jane Saunders as our 6th president. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Blosser. At this time, I'll entertain a motion from the board to confirm Dr. Mary Jane Saunders as the president of Florida Atlantic University.
I hope you'll let me make it.
But of course.
On behalf of the board, I'd move the confirmation of Dr. Mary Jane Saunders as the president of Florida Atlantic University.
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion is approved. Dr. Saunders, welcome. You are now confirmed as the president of Florida Atlantic University. Do you have a few words you'd like to say? You want to clap again? Yeah.
Thank you all very much for this confirmation as the 6th president of Florida Atlantic University. As you heard from my remarks yesterday, I'm very, very excited about the bright future of FAU. The former president, Chancellor Brogan, and the Board of Trustees, with the support of the Board of Governors, have led this university to its highest enrollment ever, well-grounded partnerships with the area state colleges, new research opportunities with Harbor Branch and an independent medical school, and exciting prospects for the growth of the new Florida economy with our prestigious partners. In my 10 days on campus, I have met dedicated faculty and staff, talented students, and enthusiastic community supporters. This is a great honor and privilege. I promise you I will do my very best to serve the students of Florida Atlantic University well. Again, I'm very, very grateful for this opportunity. Thank you, and go Owls.
Welcome back to Florida. We are so happy to have you, and we look forward to working with you. We will now go on to item number 5 on our agenda, which is the status reports and the coverage of any action items from our boards or committees. The first on the agenda is Budget and Finance. Governor Perez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Budget and Finance Committee met this morning. We had a healthy discussion about a number of issues, and several actions were taken that need to be taken again by this board. So if I'll draw your attention to item 5A under Budget and Finance. The 2011-2012 LBR operating policy guidelines were adopted by the committee this morning, and on behalf of the committee, I move their approval this afternoon.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Governor Perez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Item B, notice of intent to amend BOG regulations. We discussed Regulation 7.008, waiver of tuition and fees, and Regulation 9.009, preparation of SUS financial statements. This is our notice of intent. If approved by the board, we'll post them for 30 days and then consider them at the September meeting. I move both regulations on behalf of the committee.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Governor Perez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We then took up the tuition differential fee proposals. We did so university by university, Madam Chair, and I would suggest we do so again since some of the voting was disparate in the committee meeting. At the end of the day this morning at the committee meeting, all 11 universities' differential fee proposals were approved. However, at your direction, I will go university by university on our motions.
Go ahead, Dr.
Madam Chair, on behalf of the committee, we move approval of the FSU tuition differential fee.
So moved.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
I got a second. I'm treating yours as the motion, and Governor Stubbs a second. Thank you.
And I
Governor Perez.
just want to be clear for the record, this is a 7% increase for each of these universities, so I won't reiterate
for the
that.
clarification.
On behalf of the committee, I move the University of North Florida.
And so we don't have to, I'm voting no on each proposal.
I think for the record, I still need to ask for
I think you
favor
do.
and those opposed. So if you don't mind, I'm going to do that to Governor Trim. Thank you, Governor Perez.
On behalf of the committee, we'll move approval of the University of North Florida's tuition differential fee.
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed?
Oppose.
Yeah. Governor Perez.
On behalf of the committee, we move the approval of the tuition differential fee for Florida A&M University.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
No.
Madam Chair, on behalf of the committee, we move the approval of the USF Tampa tuition differential fee.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
No.
Governor
Madam
Perez.
Chair, on behalf of the committee, we move the approval of the USF Sarasota Manatee campus tuition differential fee.
So moved.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
No.
Madam Chair, on behalf of the committee, we move approval of the USF St. Pete campus tuition differential fee.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
No.
On behalf of the committee, Madam Chair, we move approval of the USF Polytech tuition differential fee.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
No.
Madam Chair, on behalf of the committee, we move approval of the Florida Gulf Coast University tuition differential fee.
So moved.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
No.
No.
Madam Chair, on behalf of the committee, we move approval of the FIU tuition differential fee.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
No.
Madam Chair, on behalf of the committee, we move approval of the University of West Florida's tuition differential fee.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
No.
Madam Chair, on behalf of the committee, we move approval of the University of Florida's tuition differential fee.
So moved.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
No.
Madam Chair, on behalf of the committee, we move approval of Florida Atlantic University tuition differential fee.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
No.
Madam Chair, on behalf of the committee, we move approval of the New College of Florida's tuition differential fee.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
No.
Finally, Madam Chair, on behalf of the committee, we move approval of the University of Central Florida tuition differential fee.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
No.
Governor Perez.
Madam Chair, we also discussed the current legislation from the legislature which provides our Board of Governors the opportunity and ability to set and establish new fees for universities. As this board knows, we received several fee requests, but determined as a committee that it was not timely to consider those requests until proper rules and regulations on how we were going to analyze and address those issues were determined. And at this time, on behalf of the committee, Madam Chair, I would like to request that you appoint a task force to create some methodology for reviewing fee request proposals, market rate tuition, and other areas covered by the statute from the legislature. And our recommendation from the committee would that at least the task force include myself as chair of the Budget Committee, Governor Duncan as chair of the Student and Academic Affairs Committee, and our student representative, Governor Franklin, as well as other representatives you may deem fit from universities and or the board.
Thank you, Governor Perez. I will certainly take that into consideration. I guess the folks you've named, you can assume that those folks have automatically been appointed, and we'll take a look and see if we should add anyone else. If you would, are you going to take the lead on that, Governor Perez, or you recommend that someone else take the lead on that issue?
No, I think that would probably fall under my responsibility. I'll take the lead on that as long as you assign me Mr. Jones as staff lead.
Right. I think, Mr. Jones, you've been drafted for that. Thank you very much, Governor Perez.
That concludes our report, Madam Chair.
I'm sorry, Governor Colson.
You know, I feel compelled to say something about the tuition differential increases because I have been very supportive of the goal of getting our state university tuition to the national average over the next 5, 6, 7, 10 years. My support was founded in part on the hope that the additional fees and incomes resulting from them would really move our state universities to the next level. And also because I had the belief, and I held the belief that we would be able to set aside enough money for financial aid to take care of all the families in Florida who would be impacted by this in such a way that if we didn't provide them assistance, that they wouldn't be able to get a college degree. I'm concerned about both reasons why I supported it initially. One is, I understand now what we're doing is we're using the money not to move the ships forward, but just to keep the ships afloat, and that's okay. We need to do that, and we're probably going to need to do it next year. But I am concerned that the subject of need-based aid and how we define need needs to be broadened. We need to be able to tell the families of two school teachers who have 3 children and they make a combined total of $80,000 and don't qualify for Pell Grants, that as we double tuition over 5, 6, 7 years, that they're going to be able to afford to send their children to school. And so I would ask that over the next few months that we really delve into the subject of financial aid and how this impacts. And it also gets to the question of fees. When we allow a university to create a new fee that does basically what tuition does, when they use the fee mechanism, they don't have to set aside 30% of that fee for financial aid. Whereas if they use that money out of tuition, they would. The legislature has told us that they want us to cap this tuition increase to 15%, and we shouldn't let that be bypassed by calling something a fee. So I'm just concerned about this, and I'm concerned about the impact it has on families. I know we need the money, and I know that we're underpriced and undervalued, and I know the state university systems are doing a whole lot with very, very little. But as we make this move, I think we need all that brain power to be creative about financial aid.
Very much. I think that I know we had quite a few discussions about that during our committee work, and I want to please ask the Chancellor if you would set up some type of a workshop for us during our upcoming meetings that actually addresses the issue of financial aid. I think they're based upon the comments from the committee meetings as well as from a comment from Governor Colson today, there certainly is a group of families that are feeling pretty stretched, and they don't seem to fit in the category of what the federal government would define as need-based financial aid or Pell Grant eligible. So we want to make sure that we're directing our dollars in the best direction. Right. Governor Duncan?
Madam Chair, I also would just like for the record on this minute to get the concept of the Chancellor continuing to work on the efficiency regulation, and that by all means, even though we're approving these fees, we're not taking our eye off the ball on continuing to reduce costs wherever possible, and that I look forward to his report back on how do we continue to move forward on that front as well.
Governor Franklin?
And Madam Chair, as we do the analysis as well, I'm really interested in finding out the true out-of-pocket costs that some of the students are having, because a lot of our students are on Bright Futures and Federal Pell Grant. So I'm wondering what the actual number is, or average per student, what the true cost out-of-pocket is within the state university as well, as we look at defined federal need-based aid.
Any other comments? I guess the one thing is that I want to commend Governor Perez for his work. I know this committee started working prior to our actually coming to University of Central Florida for our in-person meeting. And I want to commend the universities for the work they put into preparing their request for the differential tuition. And I've heard a couple of comments throughout the last 3 days that we've been together that talks about the fact that there was some expectation from the legislature that they would go to a certain point, and they believed that we would go to the next point, I guess, to get up to the 15%. And one comment I want to make is I want to ensure the Florida families and our students that the choices that I believe we made today as a board were very thoughtful, and that we understand that that these are very tough economic times, but we also understand our responsibility to ensure that our students receive a valuable education. And we think that from the presentations that we receive, that the board has voted that we think is in the best interest of our system, that we did grant the proposals, but there is no assumption that just every time that a proposal is presented, that is an automatic stamp of approval from the board. So thank you very much, Governor Perez, for your committee work. The next item, I think, is from Governor Edwards and the Facilities Committee.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. We have one action item. Our committee approved, and I move the adoption of the 2011-12 LBR fixed capital outlay policy guidelines as shown on page 66 in our materials.
Second.
All in favor? Any discussion? Yeah, I'm sorry. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Right. Governor Edwards?
That concludes our report.
Governor Duncan?
Yes, Madam Chair, we have several action items today. The first several relate to new program approvals. Want to make sure everyone understands that these programs have been vetted twice now. First, on June 11th, we had the academic programs team who was part of the strategic planning team and had been reviewing these previously, went through all of these, and we had a number of members in that lively discussion going over a lot of the details of each of these programs. And then again this morning in the committee. So with that, the first proposal that we are recommending to be approved is the University of South Florida seeking limited access status for the BA, BS in advertising. An updated version of the university's request has been provided, and it was approved by the USF Board of Trustees on December 3rd, and is located within the College of Business, where all the programs are already limited access due to limited resources of faculty and instruction facilities. This request for limited access will align the advertising program with required grade point average proficiency expected for all College of Business applicants. So with that, I would move approval, and also given the timing that they want to get this in place for fall, we are, as part of the motion, asking to waive the second reading, that we would normally take this up in our September meeting, but we're suggesting to do it today.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Governor Duncan.
Yes. The second proposal is also from the University of South Florida, requesting authorization to implement a Doctor of Philosophy in Economics with a primary emphasis in health economics. The proposed program is a conversion of an existing program track in the College of Business Administration to become a standalone degree program within the College of Arts and Sciences. The University of South Florida Board of Trustees approved this PhD in economics in December, and if approved by the Board of Governors, it would be an implementation for this fall, so consequently also requesting the waiver of the second meeting rule for this so that it can take effect immediately. And also just to add that it is existing students, and no new dollars are being requested as a part of this program. So with that, I would move approval.
There's a second.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Governor Duncan.
Our third one is it's a university, well, let me just skip. There's one other proposal we considered in committee, and that was voted favorably for, we moved to not waive the rule, but it'll be brought up in September from the Florida Gulf Coast for a PhD in education. But again, just for any other board members, it's in your package. If there's any information or concerns you have between now and the September meeting, please speak up, because the committee had a good discussion on it and viewed it very favorably. But if you have any issues or concerns, please make sure you get with staff before the next meeting.
Just for the record, it was an EDD.
I'm sorry. Thank you. The next request is from the University of Florida, that has requested the termination of a PhD in Computer and Information Science, CIP code 11.0101. The program curriculum was recreated under Computer Engineering CIP code 14.0901 in 1995, and new enrollments were suspended. No students have been enrolled in this program since 1997. The final termination of this program was formally approved by the UF Board of Trustees on June 12th. In 2009, if approved by the Board of Governors, this termination will become effective immediately. Madam Chair, I move approval.
There's a second.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Governor Duncan.
Okay, two more. We have two items that are proposed Board of Governors regulations related to admissions and articulation. They'll serve to clarify and codify existing practice. Each of the regulations has been reviewed by the University General Councils, members of the Council of Academic Vice Presidents, the State University System academic contacts, and other state university staff directly involved with common prerequisite process. Pursuant to the regulation procedure adopted by the Board at its meeting in March of 2006, we're required to provide public notice by publication on the Internet web for these at least 30 days before the adoption of the regulation. The Board Regulation 6.018 regarding substitutions, modifications of requirements for program admission, undergraduate transfer, and for the graduation by students with disabilities is being brought forward for consideration. The regulation is being expanded so that it may align with disabilities recognized in the Florida statute and the State Board of Education 6A rule for the Florida college system. It will ensure that students seeking a substitution or modification receive the same treatment in both sectors. The Articulation Coordinating Committee reviewed both the proposed amended regulation and rule and supports the amended language, and I would move approval.
I guess my question is, do I need an motion on this? Because this is just a notice of intent too, right? I do need a motion? Okay.
Second.
So, there was a motion.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? If not, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Motion carries. Governor Duncan?
Okay, last one. New Board Regulation 8.010, Common Prerequisites, is being brought forward for consideration for noticing. Common prerequisites are lower division courses that are required for progression into upper division of a particular baccalaureate degree program, and they serve as a basic building block for the statewide articulation agreement between the state university system and the Florida college system. Due to faculty and staff turnover, it became apparent that during recent Common Prerequisite Update project, there was sufficient misunderstanding about common prerequisites to warrant codifying the requirement into both regulation and rule. The Articulation Coordinating Committee reviewed the proposed regulations in its May 2010 meeting and has expressed its support. Representatives from the Florida College System will be following our lead and moving forward with either rule or technical assistance on this matter, and I would move approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Governor Duncan?
Am I not done? I'm done.
Just ask you to
I'm
say
done.
something.
I'm worn out. I hope I'm done.
Governor Martin?
We have two items that were discussed in the Strategic Planning Committee meeting today. Notice of intent. There are two items. The first item is to amend the BOG Regulations 1.001, University Board of Trustees Powers and Duties. Recommend approval.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Motion carries. Governor Martin?
The last item is a notice of intent to promulgate new Board Regulations 9.012, disclosure of gifts from foreign governments and persons.
Second.
So move it.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Motion carries. Governor Martin?
That's it.
Thank you very much. Governor Tripp?
Thank you. The Audit and Compliance Committee met. We have two items basically, and that's one is approval of the Audit and Compliance Committee Charter Annual Review. I move that.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye. I really was coming, I promise.
The second was approval of the Inspector General and Director of Compliance Charter Annual Review. I move that.
Is there a second? Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. The last item is we are preparing a handbook that basically sets forth the duties and obligations of the committee, but also of all of the board members, your duties and obligations as a board member. These handbooks are in draft form. We'll be sending them to you, ask you to look at them. Derry Harper will be calling you for your comments, and when we get it in final form, it'll come back to the committee for approval. Other than that, we have nothing further. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Governor Tripp. I know on our agenda, you see that there is a report noted from the Trustee Nominating Committee. Governor Hussaini had to leave early. I just note for the record that I think we have 22 Board of Trustee positions, 23 Board of Trustee positions that committee will be addressing. I understand there's some concern about the amount of turnover on some of the boards, and we will make sure that that committee is aware of that concern. So with that, are there any other comments or concerns that you'd like to express for the good of the order? To the
Very
board?
good meeting.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much for your commitment. Chancellor Brogan, any more comments?
No, ma'am.
Thank you. With that,
That was
There was a collective gasp in the room.
We all just held our breath there for a moment.
It was a gutsy call.
Not polite. Okay.
It's going to rain.
With that, I will see you in September. The meeting is adjourned.